Before we get started, got to give a big shout out to the people who make this possible, Open Fortune. Are you looking for a unique way to reach your audience? Open Fortune offers an innovative approach to advertising by placing your brand message inside fortune cookies. Yep, you heard me. Reaching 99% of US zip codes through a network of 47,000 restaurants. It's a memorable and effective way to connect with consumers at a moment when they're most receptive. So if you want to check them out, it's time to elevate your marketing with Open Fortune. Thank you for making it possible today. Sweet. Really excited about this one. When I got the email that she was coming on, I jumped out of my chair. Joining us today on the podcast is a powerhouse in marketing and brand strategy, Sarah Larson, currently the Chief Marketing Officer of Home Entertainment at Samsung Electronics America, with over 2 decades of experience across branding, digital marketing, and product strategy. Sarah has a remarkable track record of crafting engaging, consumer-focused campaigns that resonate globally. At Samsung, she's steering the ship for one of the world's leading tech brands, ensuring that the home entertainment experience isn't just about screens, it's about connecting with consumers in a meaningful and innovative way. Before Samsung, Sarah held influential roles at Creata and Edelman, where she leveraged her expertise in brand strategy, digital transformation, and emerging trends to drive impactful marketing campaigns. Her journey has seen her excel in both agency and in-house roles, developing a well-rounded perspective that makes her a unique leader in the field. Today, Sarah brings her strategic insights and vision to the table. We're excited to dive into her story and her future. Today, Sarah brings her strategic insight and creative vision to the table, and we're excited to dive into her story. So, Sarah, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you. And, how'd you end up in that chair where you are today?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm pretty excited with that level of an intro. How did I end up in this chair? I think I was born to do marketing. It was in my DNA from birth, pretty much. I played soccer all my life, and my coach has stories of 10-year-old me trying to organize a bus to take all of us from the hotel we were staying at a tournament to a neighboring hotel that was supposedly having a party, with the ulterior motive of getting intel on the teams we were going to play, because I thought that was definitely the best way to.
And so when you were filling out what you wanted to be when you grew up as a kid, was it always marketing, or was there something first? Was it professional ninja, or just marketing in general?
It was never marketing, actually, until I didn't know what marketing was. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I would pour through Vogue magazine, and I could do all the drawings, and I had them hanging up in my room. I was sure that was my future calling. And then my father, I really credit him for saying, yeah, you're really artistic and creative, and that's great, but you're also really, really good at the business sides of things. You're great at math. You're great at communicating with people. I really think you should look at marketing because it combines both of them. So I really have my dad to thank for that.
Absolutely. And was there a brand that first and foremost really resonated with you, and then you realized, you kind of self-actualized and realized, hey, why did this make me feel a certain way?
I think, yeah, without realizing it. And it probably was fashion brands. So I'm dating myself, but I was definitely a child of the 80s. And Esprit was the brand that everyone wanted to have. And now looking back, what appealed to me about Esprit was not, and Benetton, not I like the clothes and what they look like, and I like the status component of it. It was also their messaging and their image, that they always had very diverse looking people, and they always had, unexpected images in their creative. And for me, I just found that so artistic and appealing. Plus, it was a brand that I loved, and there was that demand that it created, the cool factor. I don't think at the time I had any idea that's what was drawing me to it. But now, as a marketer doing this, you were generous with over 2 decades. We're really close to 3. Doing it for quite a long time, I can honestly say it was their marketing that sold me on it.
And I want to jump into different career roles, but before we do, envisioning this from a macro, right? And this would be a hard question to answer, but how have you seen marketing transform, and what marketing means in the last 2.5 decades?
Oh my gosh. 2.5. It really is 3. It has transformed dramatically. So keep in mind, when I first started working, we didn't have the internet. So that alone was a big transfer in how we market. I can remember being at a fax machine and putting fax advisories through and waiting for it to dial up to that number and hoping it went through correctly. So from a technical perspective, it's been very different. I think from a marketing perspective, obviously the internet and particularly social has just transformed marketing, where it went from a very at conversation where you were talking at your audiences because it wasn't two-way, to becoming this wide open 24/7 platform where anyone could share their messaging, and you didn't have to be a media or entity or some sort of advertising platform for people to hear what you had to say. So I think social probably was the biggest transformation. And then living through everything with COVID just shifted, both from an acceptance of digital trajectory, which has gone so fast, to even finding different ways to connect that aren't experiential and in person, and what the backlash has been from that. I think the future of where we're going with marketing is very much blended lines. So gone are going to be the days of very traditional marketing where you run linear TV or you run your creative out of home and it's just a once and done thing. Now it's this integration of marketing into everything you do, whether it's really smart partnerships or it's making culturally responsible in what you're doing, and that you're resonating with what people are talking about and what their conversations they're already having are, and you insert yourself organically. It's just a big shift to becoming almost a melting pot, I think, of all the different marketing channels that we've used in past.
Totally. And we'll dive in more on that and what you're doing right now and how that's developed. But you end up graduating from Penn State, go Nittany Lions, and starting at Early Palmer Brown and having a real career in PR. What did PR look like back then? And I'm always curious, like how much of it really is relationships versus this pitching the stories and the quality of the stories.
Yeah, and I actually love the fact that it came up on the earned side of the house, because I think that makes me a unique CMO, because not many have that type of a background coming into where I am now. But PR back when I first started, it always was relationship driven, but it's also a high level of science and intelligence too. Whether it's the insights that you're pulling out to talk about, whether it's finding that white space where earned stories can truly live and you can carve out something that your brand can own. And then it's also understanding your audience, not just your end audience with the consumer, but in the case of PR, it's understanding the media. What's on their plate? What's their headspace? What's their editorial calendar like? And what are they looking for in stories? So I think a lot of it is developing those relationships, because you understand that there's different features that each of the editors are focused on, but you also understand their style and their perspective and what they're looking for.
Totally. And with PR, it's something now at least, and I'm curious how you view it, because back then there really weren't digital ads, right? There was no return ROI guarantee through Facebook and such. PR is an interesting cat now because it isn't something that is directly ROI driving. For those people, I've had people come on the show and say PR is dead. I've had people come on the show and say the best thing you can do in launching a product is hire a PR firm. Where do you stand on that, between those two dichotomies? And do you think PR is dead? And where do you think it is right now?
Well, David. Of course, I don't think PR is dead. It's where I came from. I actually think earned is the future. But I will say it is so incredibly important to have an earned mindset in any of the marketing that you're doing. And it's particularly important when we're, in macroeconomic conditions that you're seeing tightening budgets, and that every dollar is under so much profit pressure to make sure that it's selling, selling, selling. That's where earned really comes to play, because it's scrappier, it's smarter, it's more strategic, and it's almost surgical in the approach, as opposed to putting an ad out there and spending millions. With PR, you're being very focused and concentrated, and you're able to personalize a lot about what you're doing and making sure that you are getting that ROI. So we've been exploring a lot of different methodologies for measurement when it comes to PR. And we've been looking at how, when you read a story online and you leave that pixel, we then can track you through that pixel by using product registration to where you went in your journey and where you ended up buying the product. So I could tell, David, if you read an article 3 weeks ago online, and then you went into a Best Buy and you TV purchased one, and you register that TV, I'll know that you were exposed to my messaging from that PR article 3 weeks previously. So I think there are ways they're starting to do that.
How do you do that? How do you know with earned media, specifically PR, it's getting a certain amount of traffic? Are they like reporting that back to you, or is there something that you're pixelating? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, so if you read an article, and thanks to cookies, you're leaving a pixel when you've been on there, you've opened it up. And so then what we can track it to is by registration, and you opt in, we have your data then. And so then we can match back to what your habits were and where you were. And it's not a one-to-one, it's certainly not an exact science. But then again, what measurement really is an exact science, especially when there's an online and an in-person shopping journey. So if you are doing both, that's print, which I have to admit I still love, and I do read some magazines cover to cover. If you're doing that, I'm not going to be able to track it either, other than knowing that you have a subscription. So it's a little bit of guessing, but at least it's closer to a scientific deduction than what we've had previously.
I'm really fascinated with this because earned media is something that's really big on our platform, and I agree with you. I think it's for the right brands at the right moments. Like, it could be everything, right? So I'm curious to understand, like, for something like trusted reviews or websites like Consumer Reports or things like that, do you have like direct relationships with those folks, or is that just organic pickup?
Not only do we have direct relationships, I have an entire ratings and reviews team.
Wow,
like
cool.
There are people in my organization that's their job. They're dedicated to that. And you have to be, because third-party endorsements and word of mouth is such a huge motivator when it comes to purchase decision. And people often say the first people they go to is friends and family. So it's a word of mouth as influencing their purchase decision when it comes to, say, TVs. And then second is trusted advisors and third parties that they believe in. So we are always looking at what these different media outlets are saying when they do tech reviews. And then we license what we see that is really something that we feel should be pushed out there. And then we can use that through all of our marketing channels so that more people are hearing that Consumer Reports thinks our Neo QLED and our OLED are the best TVs out there. I mean, we've been number one for 18 years, and there's a reason we have been. It's not just that our products are kick-ass, because they are. It's also because we are very good at getting the word out about them.
Agreed. I will second the kick-assedness. We have 3 Samsung TVs in this house, so.
Most households do.
I always find it really fascinating when people come from an agency background and then go to brand, or, start at a brand background and go to agency. What was your agency experience like for you? What did it teach you, and how does it currently serve you in your role?
I think an agency background is outstanding and such the way to go. And in fact, I look for that when I'm interviewing people for open roles on my team. And there's a couple reasons. One, an agency background means that you have the ability to get up to speed really quickly on a new area or a new subject matter. And you have those tools and the wherewithal to know how to do that. So that serves you well in almost any corporate situation. Secondly, agencies are used to justifying all of their spend, and they're used to being very scrappy and smart and creative with their problem solving. That kind of also serves you well, even if you work for an iconically huge global brand. You still are under a lot of pressure to tighten it and make sure every dollar is working for you. So if you're naturally thinking scrappy, I'm going to want you on my team, because you're going to be thinking, what's the best way we can do this, but what's the most efficient way, and how are we cutting the fat? And then third, I feel that an agency background is also super beneficial because you are used to that client service mentality. So how you interact with key stakeholders and how you justify and rationalize the different programs that you're working on and how you support them, and making sure that you start with insights, that you have measurement included from the beginning. All of those important components from a client service perspective bear the best results when you're in a corporate environment as well. So I'm pro agency, I guess you could say.
I agree, and I had my started at Vayner, an agency as well. So shout out to past podcast guests Gary and AJ Vaynerchuk.
I just had dinner at Gary's house last week.
Oh, really?
Way.
Yeah,
it was an amazing dinner too, with like 9 other CMOs, and he just got us together to kind of shoot the shit. It was the best night that I've had in a long time.
That's awesome. So Gary invested in my company. We met him a couple of years back. Yeah, and he invested. Adweek article came out comparing us to the Super Bowl last year, and it just changed the game for us. It was everything. He's the man. He's a good person.
He's great.
What you see is what you get. That's rare.
Yeah, he's very genuine. I totally agree.
Yeah, I worked with him for a while too. But yeah, I want to jump into, you end up spending about 10 years in an agency background. I'm gonna ask you to pick your favorite kind of the ones you worked with, at least which one you had the best experience with and why, what was special about the culture that they had, what was special about the projects that you were working on, and what are you most proud of because of that during that 10-year period?
Well, I liked all of my agencies that I've worked for, and I've worked for quite a few. I think probably the reason I've liked them is really the people. And there's been a ton of overlap where I've worked with some people at Weber, and then I moved to Edelman and worked with some of the same people at Edelman, or some people that were at Edelman were at Ogilvy and we overlapped. So I think a lot of these big agencies are such great places to work because you're so surrounded with like-minded people that even when you're in the trenches and you're working till 2 a.m. trying to get an RFP out, you're surrounded with people that are really in it with you too. And I find a lot of the agency people that I worked with, they're all doers. We're all kind of type A, and we're all want to get stuff done, and everyone just chips in. There's not a lot of people standing to the side and just directing and not doing. So I think that's why I also have had such positive agencies. I'll give a special shout out probably to Weber Shandwick though, because I was definitely with them the longest. And we just did a big RFP that they won for us to partner with them again. So it's kind of come full circle. And in fact, it's what was really amazing is in through the pitch process, they were bringing different people in, and so many different people they brought in were people from my past at different agencies. So there was a woman I worked with at Ogilvy. There was a gentleman that I worked with at Edelman. There was, people that I worked with at Weber 15 years ago that I haven't seen since then. It was like almost my life in review sitting around the table. So I think that also was a nice experience. And agency people are just connectors by nature. So that also comes into play, that your paths keep overlapping.
Yeah, absolutely. And you end up getting this role, right? And I've never spoken to anybody who's the CMO of Samsung, so you're my first. And I think when you read that role out, you really, at least my first question was, what does Sarah actually do on a day to day?
What
And I know that's
doesn't
a really
Sarah?
hard question, but if you could give me a sample
A day in the life?
day in the life.
Sure. Well, I'm an early riser, so I do start my day at 5 a.m. And I am embarrassed to say I naturally wake up at 5 a.m. I never set an alarm. It is just when I open my eyes. So I always start my morning. I read the Morning Brew, which I love. I read the New York Times online global edition, not the US edition, because I like hearing global perspective on the news. And then I do all of the New York Times games. So I do Wordle with one of my daughters and my dad. I do the mini crossword with another one of my daughters. And then I do connections and everyone, Strands, the new one. I love them. I like that mental challenge. I also challenge myself with Sudoku that I have to finish it in under 3 minutes or else I erase it and redo it. So I guess my competition starts with myself. Then I will usually, sometimes I do that while working out, or else I'll go take my dog for a nice long walk, and then I head into the office and I start my day. And at Samsung, in my organization, it's very diverse. So I have everything, digital marketing team and all our performance marketing. So our CRM, our SEM, our SEO, over to all the earned side of the house. So I have PR and I have social and I have insights and I have influencer and partnership, over to the media side where I have all of our paid media. And then over to in-store, I have all of our retail accounts and our in-store displays and merchandising, as well as retailer websites. And then I have Samsung.com as part of my remit, as well as anything on influencer talent and content side. So being that so much, pretty much any touch point in the US that you encounter Samsung TVs, whether you're in a Best Buy, you're getting served an ad online, you're reading your favorite article and you're dropping that pixel without realizing it, all of those different touch points ultimately ladder up to me. So I have a big team with a lot of really brilliant, smart people. And my day usually starts with a touch base with all the directors together, going through each of the lines of business, each of the channels, and what everyone has going on for that week to make sure we're all in sync. And then my other favorite part of the day is twice a week, I have what's called creative review, where every possible piece of creative that we could be doing, whether it's an actual traditional creative like an ad, or it's a concept, an idea, a new partnership we're thinking about, a sponsorship activation, anything, landing page on our website, they all get presented to me by my team in the agencies. And in 1 hour, I'll approve everything for that week. So it's a fascinating meeting because it will definitely run the gamut. And we do on the spot brainstorming. I might see creative that we're running for, let's say, I know a perfect example. We were doing creative, the team presented creative for Mother's Day. And it was a concept that leaned into mom guilt about throwing away your child's artwork. And I said, okay, I love it. Let's do it for Father's Day. And the whole team just got quiet. They're like, it won't work for Father's Day. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, dads don't feel guilty about throwing away the artwork. I said, yep, that's my point. We're not using that for Mother's Day. We're not reinforcing stereotypes. So part of my role, and also particularly coming up on the earned side of the house, it's also thinking through representation and diversity and making sure that the creative we're using is honest and true, and that it is representative, and that it's not reinforcing stereotypes. So that's a big portion of everything that I'm looking at. While I'm also looking at, is the product featured in the right way? Is this the right message we want to send? Are we calling out the features in the way that we should be? Are we showing the consumer benefits? So it's a lot of conflicting mindset while you're looking at everything.
That's a really great example that you laid out, and makes all the sense in the world, especially for a brand like Samsung, which is so inclusive and is in almost everybody's household, or in a ton of US households. I'm curious, with such a household brand, how do you manage, keeping the status quo going on while also pushing creativity and innovation, and kind of, trying some big bets that you're not sure will pay off, that are risky.
So if you've heard any of my previous podcasts or speaking things, I'm a big proponent of what I call microdosing bravery. So what I try to do is push myself out of my own box, let alone everyone else's, at least once a day in some way, shape, or form. And it can be something tiny, or it can be something massive. When it comes to our marketing, I'm always piloting never been done before ideas. Like, I will try anything if it's backed up by the insights and the data that we think it's a good calculated risk. I'm going to dip our toe in the water, because you're never going to know if you don't try. And I am a big proponent of failing fast and learning from that. So it's perfectly fine to do something and it doesn't work. Then we know. And there's also the flip side of, we do something small and it works beautifully, and then we scale it. Like we did, and we do a ton of testing. We did this fascinating test with some of our emails for CRM, where we found out that when it was rainy outside, people were less likely to shop than when it was sunny. Which is funny, because you think it's the opposite. If it's rainy, you think you're inside on your computer. But no, people's mindset was more positive. They were more likely to splurge and make purchases when it's nice outside. So using movable ink, we were able to geolocate where people were and what the weather was when they got our emails, and then change the headline based on every time they opened it. So you might open it on a sunny day and the email would say something about sun's out, times to shop, something like that. And then you went back in your inbox 2 days later when it was rainy and you happened to click on that email, the headline would change to something about rain, rain, go away. It just was a weird, funky little thing that we found out about consumer behavior, but we used it to test. And we did see a much more positive result when people open those emails on a sunny day than when they were looking at them and it was rainy.
Super cool. Love movable ink. Know them well. That's awesome. Really smart. It's funny, those nuanced things you don't really think about that really make such a difference, right? And you never know.
I love geeking out on the science side, and that's why I'm not scared of failing, because I look at everything as an experiment. It's not a failure. It's just testing different theories. And why shouldn't we have a hypothesis?
Fail fast and fail up.
That's right. And learn from it. If you don't learn from it, then that's your loss.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's cool.
Yeah, you quoted Eleanor Roosevelt, which is do one thing every day that scares you. So I think that's great advice. And I'm curious, when Samsung brought you on, what were the pain points that they were facing, and what were you tasked to do?
Yeah, it's been a journey. I've been here 3 years now. When I first came on, our marketing was strong, but a little bit disjointed. And it was a bit more of once and done things. Like we'd have a big moment and then we'd move on to the next. And there wasn't any continuity in keeping that momentum going. So 2 things that I really had to change. One was creating consistency through the line. And the second was building a thematic that we continued laddering back to throughout the year. So in year 1, it was really a listening year and a learning year. And I didn't want to come in brand new and just shake up everything. So it was more of getting the lay of the land and doing some little baby tests as we went along. And then year 2 was really changing things up. And a lot of the change came with changing our approaches and putting a little bit more rigor around what we were doing, and also really trying to create more connective tissue for all of my different channels so they weren't as siloed, and getting everyone together. And then year 3 has been just more of a change up of everything else. So we changed our agency structure, we changed our creative process. It's a lot of reusing resources, so making sure that we have a central creative theme, and then we're pushing that out through each of the marketing channels, as opposed to each marketing channel coming up with their own creative. So that was a big change. Not just did it result in more consistency, it also created efficiencies. And then the third area that I really massively changed, and this is mostly in this last year, is the idea of showing, not telling, when it comes to our products. So everyone talks about consumer electronics and techs and specs and feeds and speeds. And one of the exercises I did was put up all of the creative, ourselves and also our competitors, on a wall. And you couldn't even tell which was Samsung and which wasn't, because it was so hard to see a differentiator. Everyone was doing it kind of the same way. So in that sea of sameness, I've broken through with the brand to be much more culturally relevant and tie into cultural moments. But most importantly, it's always communicating what's in it for the consumer, because ultimately a consumer should care about what's in it for them. They don't care about my brand message or what feature is technically has the fastest speed. They want to understand how that's going to help them. So a big change in our approach came this past spring when we were launching our 8K TVs, and they have something called AI upscaling, which is a super technical experience where basically it adjusts your TV to the optimum settings for ideal picture quality. So how do you bring such a techie thing to life? We did research, and the number one thing people wanted to do was upscale their favorite shows from their childhood. And the 90s have certainly been having a moment. I know I have 2 Gen Z kids who are amazed that I know every word to every 90s rap song. But it is true. It was my genre, and I was listening to it then. So we took shows like 90210 and Urkel and some of those components, and we created a fake pilot that involved every 90s trope you could think of. And we had it starring Molly Shannon and Tim Meadows from SNL, who were in their heyday with the 90s, and had them as identical twins, without alluding to the fact that they really don't look even slightly identical for a variety of reasons. And we created this fun pilot, and we showed it originally in the low-res, grainy view that you would be if you were watching anything from the 90s. And then midway through the pilot, we turned on AI upscaling, and it instantly transformed to a crisp and clear picture. So that was such an easy get for consumers. And the best part about it was it automatically does it for you. So you don't have to go in and configure your settings. It will just automatically upscale your TV. And that has resulted in such positive feedback. So not only are more consumers buying these TVs now, and we've exceeded a lot of our sales goals, but we're also getting great recognition. Like, I just found out, late breaking news, but I'll announce it here first. Time Magazine did our Neo QLED 8K TV as one of the best inventions of the year. That TV has been around for years. It's only because we changed how we market what makes it amazing.
That's so awesome. And that's proof. Marketing does work, for all those that don't think it does, it does. Right, Sarah?
It's the reason I love my job too. I will say I could market anything. And that's the best thing about marketing. I don't think it matters necessarily how much specific industry experience you have. What matters as a good marketer is, do you know your consumer, and do you know how to reach your consumer, and do you know how to engage with them and motivate them and drive purchase behavior? If you can do that, you can work in any industry. You can pick up the ins and outs of an industry, but you can't pick up how do you connect with a consumer.
I fully agree. That's, it's something that has been unsaid, but that's the great thing about marketing. I agree. It's very easy to transfer from B2B to B2C. It's all kind of the same. It's just getting and listening to pain points and how do we solve those and how do we show them in a digestible manner. So it isn't rocket science, even though sometimes we do say a lot of buzzwords as marketers, as at least
The
I do.
measurement is maybe rocket science.
Yeah. The measurement is.
You talked about a lot of, a lot of stuff that you're juggling and that you manage. I love that creative meeting where you're just ripping through for 1 hour what's got the thumbs up and what doesn't. Talk to me about we had Raja Manar, the CMO of MasterCard, on the podcast last month. We had the CMO of Delta, Alicia Tillman, and they both said something very similar. And it was like, we need to create brand experience at scale to make people feel something, but do it at scale. They were talking about like events and partnerships that they have with like Live Nation and Starbucks, all these things to drive brand experience. But they said that their main challenge was that they don't have the ability to drive experience at scale. And I'm curious, like, what type of experiential plays have you done or have considered doing? And do you feel any of them had that level of scalability?
So I probably have a bit of a diverse opinion on this. I am actually not a huge fan of experiential. And the reason is it feels very exclusive to me. So when you do experiential, and it's true experiential in person, it's often centered around urban areas, or it's where you think there's the biggest clusters of your target audience. You have to do, obviously, if you're going to spend the money and you want to get some sort of reach. I feel like that then creates almost this fear of missing out for middle America or people that are in second cities or not even in cities, if they're rural or they're suburban, and they don't feel like they get to experience this. So I have not been a big proponent of doing experiential. I want our brand to be inclusive. So, as you said earlier, so many US households have a Samsung TV. We should be reaching just as many with our marketing efforts. So I rely a lot more on social and digital for that when it comes to really engaging with our consumers. And I think it's a much more efficient way to get scale as well. Where I probably put a different spin on it is that personalization is so key. So we use a lot of different tools to really understand our segmentation and different ways and places that they are consuming every day and how we can show up there. So being culturally relevant is probably the biggest change that I've brought to Samsung over the last year. It's tying into these cultural moments that everyone is talking about. Because when you look at cultural moments, it's not exclusive just to people that are in urban cities or just coastal people. Everyone's getting on the bandwagon when they're talking about something that's buzzing and people are talking about online or on social or on TikTok. So that's where I want to insert Samsung into these conversations. And obviously it always has to be in a genuine way that's true to our brand. But that's more of where I see the ability to really reach and connect with consumers instead of having experiential or pop-ups in New York City.
I love that. Makes so much sense. I guess it's relative to how you define what experiential actually is to a degree too, right? So very cool. Great answer. Thank you.
Let's get into the quick question round. Let me just pull this up and we'll get you out of here. As the famous guru Gary Vaynerchuk once said, I only believe in 4 forms of media: influencer marketing, biddable media, the Super Bowl, and open fortune. By leveraging the simple yet impactful medium of fortune cookies, you can engage customers across 99% of US zip codes through a network of 47,000 restaurants. It's a direct, tangible, and creative way to leave a lasting impression onto your audience. So thank you, Open Fortune, for making today possible. All right, Sarah. So you just answer these questions as fast as you can. First thing that comes to mind. All right. Person you'd most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
Taylor Swift. For marketing. Come on. There's that marketing best in class.
Favorite city in the world?
US or world?
Both.
I would say it probably has to be my hometown in County Waterford, Ireland, where I have a cattle farm.
There you go. Very cool. Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
Oh, no, that feels horrible. Who does that? Crazy people. At least
I
put
do
them on
that.
if your feet are cold, but then take them off. You need to feel the
Yeah.
sheets.
Yes, Sarah, you just made me $100. Thank you.
Yeah, we bet.
We bet every single one.
Thank you.
I'm up considerably, so appreciate it.
Favorite rom-com?
Oh, I'm not a big rom-com fan. I guess it'd be
Favorite movie?
our favorite movie, Gone with the Wind. That's easy. That's kind of a rom-com.
Best spot to eat in Jersey?
Maybe Corner Cafe. It's on the corner of Grove and Walnut.
In 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for?
40 years. Handwritten anything. Cursive, especially cursive. My kids don't even know how to write cursive.
One thing people don't understand about your job is blank.
That I don't go to parties all day and just have fun, that there's actual work and science involved.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
You are a woman and you don't understand technology.
Yikes.
Wild. What's the best advice you've been given?
Don't be afraid to fail.
And in 10 years, where can we catch you?
Another giant CMO role. Who wants me?
There you go. Well, excited to have another podcast interview in 10 years. Sarah.
Maybe
That
in
was awesome.
Ireland.
Really
I do know how to drive a tractor while wearing stilettos. So I feel like
Look at
that in
that.
itself is a skill set.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us.